Welcome to Luxury Icons, the marketing and PR podcast created by the Luxury Communications Council. I'm Rosie Shepherd, the founder of the Luxury Communications Council, the world's only membership network dedicated to advancing the global luxury industry by uniting, supporting and championing marketing communication leaders. This podcast is dedicated to meeting some of the industry's most prolific leaders, delving into the challenges and opportunities that we face together. Welcome to Luxury Icons. Today I'm speaking with the much-loved and eminent luxury communications figure, Nicky Eaton. Nicky joined Christie's in 2018 as Head of Communications for EMEA, overseeing reputation, positioning and promotion of Christie's. She was swiftly promoted to Senior Director, and Editorial was then also added to her vast remit. Nicky made her name initially in publishing, firstly at Random House, later at Fourth State, which is actually part of HarperCollins, where she ended up as Deputy Managing Director. Later she joined Condé Nast, leading communications and working with the team for 13 years to promote brands such as Vogue, GQ, Tatler, Condé Nast Traveller and Wired, as well as the reputations of their respective editors. And, of course, a hefty reputation management job on the corporate communications domain. Nicky was one of our first founding members of the Luxury Communications Council all those years ago. She was instrumental in organising our first ever guest speakers at the LCC Leaders Forum, who were the president of Condé Nast and the editor of Vogue International, for which I am hugely grateful. And that is Nicky all over. She is known for being collaborative, generous and supportive, which makes her hugely popular in the industry. Nicky Eaton, welcome to Luxury Icons.
Rosie, thank you so much for having me. I really wouldn't have said yes to anyone else other than you to do this interview.
Well, great. Let's get going. I'd love to start with thinking about your current role. So what it entails, what does it mean to be the communication director over at Christie's?
Well, it's definitely one of the best jobs imaginable in the comms world. We really are dealing with the most exceptional art and objects every day. And my job is really to make sure that we're telling the story about those art and objects, reaching all of those possible bidders and buyers, but also all of those people who are just, maybe genuinely interested in what we may be having under our stewardship for a short period of time, and making sure they can come in and see those objects critically. That's hugely important to us. I think the other part of the sort of key comms approach every day when we go in is the amazing expertise that we're surrounded by, that all of our specialists hold. So how can we really share that? How can we communicate that with everyone out there? And so that's our sort of starting point, those two key pillars really. We work obviously very closely with our Americas colleagues and also those in Asia. From a comms perspective, we are speaking to clients who are international. It doesn't make any difference where the auction is actually taking place. We could have bidders coming in online, we could have them through the phones on the phone banks, we could have representatives for them in the room, or of course still in the room at those live auctions. So we really are always thinking of that global perspective, and making sure we've got alignment across that. And obviously there's a huge proactive strategy piece to my role, really looking at how we can make sure we're landing all of those great stories and air traffic controlling at the same time, because there is a lot coming out of EMEA alone before we even look at what the other regions are doing, and thinking, from a Christie's brand perspective, how we can best land those moments and celebrate them. And then the other part of my job actually is working with the editorial team for Christie's. So on the stories section of our website, we've got a fantastic executive editor, Josh, who commissions writers who also write for Airmail, The Telegraph, among others, and we're really telling those stories through that section on the website. Obviously it's the stories that we're telling from the press office as well, whether it's the earned or the owned channels. We're making sure we're across all of those touch points.
Well, I mean, that sounds like 5 people's jobs, to be honest, but I'm sure you've got a very comprehensive team.
An amazing team, definitely.
Great. And putting that in the sort of the context of the wider marketing function, you mentioned the other touch points. So obviously you're dealing with this ultra high net worth individual audience. We're not talking about Google ads here, are we? So what are sort of the most effective channels that you use?
So, I mean, without question, our role within that broader marketing function, of course, we have to be so collaborative from the outset. We are all part of one team, whether it's creative, marketing strategy, digital marketing, comms, indeed proposals, getting, from a new business perspective. We are all very much working together, with comms tending to take the lead from that storytelling and key messages perspective. In terms of our clients, because we work across so many different areas, so many sectors, whether it's luxury, watches, wine, handbags, jewels, whether it's amazing flat art, whether it's decorative art, pieces of furniture, Chippendale, let's say, through to digital art. We really have to be very, very specific and focused in our approach. So we have to really, there's no one size fits all, it really is very much drilling down to where are our audience, again going back to the global piece, they could be anywhere, and really thinking and understanding how they live their lives and therefore how we can best reach them. And that does mean we get very, very granular, and very, very specific. And of course that all plays into what's at the heart of the business, which is actually the personal relationships that then the specialists have with those collectors. So I suppose there's a slight difference as well, a major difference between what we're doing to bring in new audiences and what we're doing to speak to existing core clients. And our editorial team, every Saturday we have a Going Once magazine, which is delivered into their inboxes, and we've got 650,000 recipients of that. That's our sort of core client base, who we're really speaking to and engaging every weekend with a really nice range of, what are the 6 stories this week that we've published that we think you may be interested in receiving in this form. We publish more than 6 stories a week, and then there are other elements within that Going Once online magazine. But then obviously new audiences, it could be events, it could be panel discussions, obviously social, various things that we will be making sure are reaching them through digital. So it's very varied in that sense.
Okay, great. Well, we'll have to, I feel like there's a lot more to unpack there. We'll come back to that. Let's just going a little bit more in terms of putting everything in context. So Christie's is a name that most are familiar with, hopefully. We see amazing headlines all the time, and it's everything from, old masters, NFTs, whiskey, sneakers, celebrity wardrobes, jewellery, right the way through to dinosaur bones, which is, obviously incredible and fascinating. How do you sort of, I guess, how do you describe the breadth and scope of what Christie's do?
Well, I think Christie's is all about the incredible due diligence and provenance research that we do into every single object or every single collection that comes into us. So whatever area it is, in whatever sector, it is absolutely going to be, you can trust in what we're saying. It is absolutely the best of the best, of course, and in many cases there will only be one of that particular piece. So immediately we are talking about something incredibly special and incredibly unique in that way. So I think that's really, across whatever sector we may be working in, that is at the heart of it.
And that's the definition of luxury, is scarcity and rarity, right?
Exactly.
And in a world where you've got, I guess, mainstream luxury brand opportunity to buy on every corner of every major city, in terms of the fashion world, I guess more than anything, less so on the jewellery and watches, but luxury is everywhere now. You can get these pieces that other people have all over the world, and then there's the opportunity to buy that one. Completely. Which is where you guys come in.
Completely.
Yeah.
And I think the other part to this, of course, is the sustainability piece.
Yes.
Because actually, our business is the most sustainable business you can imagine. And we are working hard on the sustainability side of things, and this is a huge focus for the business, obviously, in terms of shipping, packaging, all of those areas that we've been doing a huge amount of work around. The reduction in what we're publishing from a catalogue perspective, that's really been a focus over the last 5 years, and we're really leading the industry in terms of what we're doing there. We're also part of the Gallery Climate Coalition, which is a very important sustainability initiative across the art market. But yeah, our business is, because of that scarcity, because of that unique nature, the most unique. And obviously you think of buying a piece of furniture at auction, you're not going to see that piece of furniture anywhere else if you go to a friend's house, and how you then can create your own interiors. You can be very unique in that approach.
Yeah, wonderful. Thinking about, you've got this vast, I think you used the words treasure trove somewhere, which we fished out, but you've got this treasure trove of incredible stories, which, you're bringing to life through, many forms of storytelling. What would you say is the most sort of memorable piece or auction story you've encountered?
Such a hard question to answer. I mean, every day you walk through the gallery and you see something extraordinary, whether it's because of the amazing value, because that it's been in a private collection, it will be going to another private collection and will never probably be seen again for 50 years. So every day you do walk through the galleries and just really sort of stop and think about the incredible opportunity that we all have as we go through those spaces. But I mean, there was a particular collection sale that came, actually it was in New York, but often when we have incredible works, we will tour them around the world, and they may go to Asia, they'll come to London, to Paris. And we had the highlights from the Paul Allen collection, which was sold towards the end of 2023 in New York. So the highlights came to London. Obviously that gave us an amazing opportunity to invite the media in to see these works. It was the highest value art collection in private hands to date. Ultimately it went for 1.5 billion. And
wow.
We had works, it covered a 500-year span from Botticelli to Seurat to Cézanne to Hockney. To have those highlights in King Street in London, and to be there early in the morning before anyone came in for the press view, you and obviously quite a lot of security, was very, very special. Yeah. And so moments like that really make the role incredible.
And am I right in thinking he'd collected sort of one of each of the major masters of that time period?
Exactly that. Obviously co-founder of Microsoft, he began his sort of passion for art and collecting after a trip to Tate Britain. And that was what really kind of, sparked something in him. And the Seurat, which we sold, which was a sort of incredible example of pointillism, and also Jasper Johns, who was very, very much a fan of, with his work with numbers. I think he said it was very much akin to his approach to computing and how his mind worked.
Well, I was thinking exactly that, meticulous, clearly.
Exactly. And, obviously when he was alive, he was an incredible philanthropist. And so the collection was sold entirely for philanthropic purposes. So
great. And you get quite a lot of that, don't you?
We do a huge amount actually of charitable focus, whether that's simply an auctioneer going to take a charity auction out of house, or indeed parts of our sales or entire sales that will be dedicated to charity.
Are there any other sort of really left field examples that you can tell us about? I know that dinosaur bones was obviously quite unique.
Very unique. I mean, not something that we had in King Street, certainly during the 6+ years that I've been there. We had, just before Christmas of last year, we had 2 Allosaurus skeletons and a Stegosaurus skeleton. So we actually had 3. We created a sort of jungle environment with jungle sounds, and it was a really great immersive experience. We created a special day for those who work at Christie's with their children to come in. We really wanted to get the children excited and engaged.
My children would love this.
It really was a huge talking point, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And dinosaur skeletons are pretty rare. And, to get them in the percentage of entirety that these were, you're never going to get 100%, of course. There are always going to be composite elements, but, they were very unique and, sold incredibly well.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But what was also very unusual was we had a sort of an adult and a juvenile skeleton together, and it's very unusual for juvenile skeletons because, of course, dinosaurs don't, they tend to, come out on top, and they live to an older age. So it's very unusual to get a juvenile, which was something that a lot of people really emotionally engaged with when they came in to visit and to view.
I can imagine.
And that's a great example. We had those skeletons in the building. We really wanted to make sure that we didn't know where they would go. Would they go into a private collection? Would they go to an institution? We wanted to make sure that while they were with us, we could get as many people in as possible to see them. And that's the point. Anything that's on view at Christie's, the door is open. Anyone can come in and really engage and enjoy it.
Gosh, I'm not sure I even knew that.
Yeah.
That's really good to know.
Yeah.
And where did the dinosaurs go?
I can't actually share that with you. I'm so sorry.
Are they in the country? Presume not. Definitely not in the country.
They're
no Brits can afford that.
Not in the country, but no. Client confidentiality is at the heart of everything we do.
Of course.
And certainly, within the proactive comms side of things, that client confidentiality piece is key.
Well, that's an interesting one. So how do you balance that sort of, private collection, private sales thing with actually whilst also trying to create a bit of buzz around something?
Yes, I think, what we're dealing with first and foremost is that piece that we will be offering at auction. And often those pieces themselves have incredible provenance, amazing stories behind them. And so even in those instances where we are not saying who is the current owner, which is, very often, we've still got enough to talk about, and there are still enough, unique points around that work, whatever it may be, that we can really celebrate. But of course, when we get those private collections that are named, that really gives us a whole other storytelling opportunity. And our CEO always refers to collections as having karma. And, you really are then able to celebrate that individual. Regrettably, sometimes the collections that we're offering are coming to us because that person has passed away. So we're dealing with, the estate or the family, and we really want to make sure that we're celebrating that individual and the legacy in the way that then their family is comfortable with. So a lot of work is done around how we approach that to really make sure that we are landing that exactly as it needs to, because it's too important.
Absolutely. It's got to be really respectful and as you say, celebratory.
Exactly that. And often, the collections themselves are giving an insight into that individual that maybe many people wouldn't have been aware of when they were alive. So you'd have Charlie Watts, amazing drummer and jazz musician, and yet he had the most incredible book for modern first edition book collection that many people only really realised when it came to auction. Barry Humphries, whose we had earlier this year, was a very, very good painter. He also had an amazing collection of, for example, Charles Condé, an Australian artist, and then also he was a passionate collector of books. So you really get a sense of the individual and what their private passions were.
Thinking a bit more about you and your career, you started in publishing, which I'd love to hear a bit more about, and you were actually at Condé Nast for 13 years, climbing the ladder. I guess at that time it could have been said to be peak Devil Wears Prada time. I'm sure your diplomacy really prevailed. Can you tell us a little bit more about that time and some of your more personal highlights of your career?
Absolutely. Well, yes, Devil Wears Prada was absolutely the talk of Vogue House, of course.
Sure.
When that came out, but yes, before the sort of the Vogue House days, and then the Adelphi, where Condé Nast International was based, latterly, I cut my teeth in book publishing, marketing and PR, first at Random House, with a variety of imprints there, including Century and Jonathan Cape, so very much going from the celebrity right through to the very literary. And I owe a huge amount to everyone I worked with there, because they really, really did. It was one of those places where you were allowed to take risks, and nothing was impossible.
Oh, love that.
In fact, that to a degree has been replicated everywhere that I've worked to date. And
well, maybe they allow you to take risks. It might not apply to everybody.
But I think the breadth of subject matter that one is often asked to work with, or certainly at that time within a book publisher, latterly going on to Fourth Estate and then to HarperCollins, it really means you are engaging with and deep diving into such a wide range of media contacts. And whether that was the placing of coverage, or indeed taking the authors on tour, which was what I spent a lot of my time doing, and that really did give you the opportunity to make fantastic connections across the media. So that was really my springboard, I suppose, to Condé Nast. Without question, those individual brands within Condé Nast, again, very much giving you that opportunity to work in very different areas and different ways in terms of what those brands and their personalities were. But obviously then there was that overarching Condé Nast corporate piece, which was critical to the whole thing. And so, having originally gone to Condé Nast Britain to run the press office, then latterly moving to Condé Nast International, where I worked with Jonathan Newhouse, setting up the press office across all of those markets, which were outside of America. So ultimately, we got to 24 markets, where I was very much sort of working with the comms team or agencies in each area. There are many highlights from that period, but I suppose two that I would pick out. One of which was British Vogue's 100th anniversary. A phenomenal experience working on that, particularly for the anniversary issue, although we also had a documentary that was being filmed at the same time. We had, at the time, of course, Duchess of Cambridge on the cover of that anniversary issue. You can imagine the confidentiality and secrecy around the shoot leading up to that publication actually hitting the newsstand.
Gosh.
And the amazing fun that we had with that media campaign. And indeed, a portrait from that shoot was being hung in the National Portrait Gallery. So that became part of the whole campaign itself. And so that was definitely a highlight in terms of keeping the lid on things.
Yes.
And then
well done.
There were a few of us involved, but not that many.
Yeah.
And then through to going to Japan for Fashions Night Out in Tokyo, the first time that Fashions Night Out had ever been carried out there, with every single Vogue editor from around the world. The orchestration of that was great fun, and one of the best and most extraordinary weeks of my life, I think.
Oh my goodness, all the devils in one place.
No, they were all brilliant, and of course impeccably behaved.
Yeah, I'm sure, of course. Now, obviously, we've already established that one of your superpowers, which I'm about to ask you about, is clearly keeping the lid on things. Another is people allowing you to do creative things, which is great. But in terms of sort of what you think is your fundamental superpower, now we ask everybody this, and we're obviously talking to marketing comms specialists who are actually at the pinnacle of their careers in most cases. Some of them are really creative, some of them are really innovative, some of them are actually just really serving the wider industry. But they do all seem to sort of be able to identify one thing that is like their superpower. What would you say yours is?
I think whether we're thinking about sort of the more proactive, strategic side of things or the reactive side of things, it's that ability to keep calm under pressure. And that calmness allows you to then engage complete clarity of thought and also decision making in that moment, whatever that moment may be. So I think it's that sense of calm, whatever may be happening around. Gosh. Which probably people call out. So.
Yeah, Yeah, that's hugely admirable. Most people get in a total flap. Well, that must have been very useful quite recently with your AI sort of. Well, I guess it wasn't really a scandal, but you did a sale of AI work that certainly led to sort of a lot of controversy. There was a lot of media coverage. There was a lot of social media discussion. Well, first of all, what's the inside scoop? How did it go down? And in your words.
Well, it was the first time ever that a collection of works had been curated to come to auction that were entirely aided in their creation by AI.
Mm-hmm.
And the sale really did generate a lot of controversy. There was a sort of a petition that was launched to sort of really call for the auction to be stopped. Mm-hmm. The auction did indeed continue and went on to sell incredibly well. And no surprise, we saw a huge percentage of new clients coming in to bid and buy mm-hmm. in that auction. And also no surprise, a lot of bidders and buyers being millennials or Gen Z. So from a new audience perspective, this was very interesting for the business, obviously. And that whole digital art area is obviously a focus for the business as we look at these new categories. From an AI perspective, positioning that within the broader art market, if we look back, over decades, over hundreds of years, art has always, at moments in time, been controversial. It generates debate. And so, it is important to allow that debate to, be thoroughly sort of discussed and explored. And I think Christie's felt, it could bring an element of incredible due diligence and quality control, if you like, to that moment. Works of art, creativity is often inspired by something that has gone before. So what we're really looking at there is what is the best of the best within this field. How is AI assisting in the creation? It's not replacing, it's assisting, and curating that and bringing the best to our clients.
Well, it is fascinating, and it does spark a lot of questions. Presumably the artists were in uproar because AI takes inspiration from previously, published works. So, I guess that, exactly. It is. It's really interesting.
Well, Warhol, that Warhol as just one example was an artist who, people said, well, he's stealing from others.
Yes.
So, it is something that we've seen over.
Absolutely. Every collage artist, presumably, you could say the same.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, it's super interesting. But as you say, art's role in many ways is to inspire that debate. I presume Christie's has some sort of, approach to this sort of moment when you've got a bit of a, I guess, discussion going around, a bit of controversy. How do you sort of handle that messaging? How do you sort of take steps to then protect the reputation of Christie's?
I think, firstly, everything comes back to that piece that we are offering. It's all about that piece and how we can best represent and protect that piece, actually, from the controversy around it. And from a Christie's perspective, the global alignment on the messaging is always going to be key. Again, we go back to the fact that our clients are international, and communicating, actually. If I think back over those moments where we've had reputational issues to manage, it's about the speed, of course, with which you communicate, and it's about the level at which you communicate, and that has to be, quite a high and detailed level. But also, of course, before any of that, let's just stop and understand what the reality is. It's so easy when you hear things sort of being, discussed and debated, you've got to check, actually, what's the truth here, what are the facts. And so that planning for so many cases, the just in case that we are always doing. I spend a lot of time on the just in case, much of which may never see the light of day. But let's just imagine all of those scenarios, what could crop up, and how would we deal with those things. So definitely a lot of pre-planning, and also then calling on past experiences.
Yes, I can imagine. But that is another superpower in itself, being able to predict those earthquakes or whatever you will call them. Yeah.
And often, then you could be accused of being the cynic in the room, because you're always thinking of the worst possible. But I am always thinking of that. While I am a naturally positive person, I am always thinking about the worst possible, which of course, fortunately rarely happens, but
yes,
just in case.
Oh, good. I suppose another sort of, I guess, almost tension must be celebrating these incredible old treasures. You're working with a brand with incredible legacy, but also it needs to be kept really fresh and relevant for the modern day, attracting that new, younger consumer, as you say. How do you go about striking that balance?
I think, again, it goes back to who are we speaking to in each individual case, and how therefore are we best able to reach them. So if it's the newer audiences, how are we engaging with them? Is it through an art and tech summit? Back in 2018, for example, we launched art and tech summits where we've now had them in London, New York, Paris, Dubai, Hong Kong. That's really speaking to a particular audience and offering a platform to discuss various areas that are relevant to art and tech. The first one we did was focused on blockchain and cryptocurrency, and indeed at the time we also were the first auction house to offer a work that was generated by AI. We go right back to the beginning.
Really ahead of the game.
Edmund de Bellamy was the name of the work of art. It was created by a Paris collective called Obvious. And they basically used AI to take thousands of portraits, family portraits, to generate this work of art that went on to sell very well. Yeah. Obviously, the debate that generated at the time was very valuable, and that was sold on the blockchain. And that was around the time when we launched Art and Tech. So speaking to a very specific new audience there, that is also, highlighting that Christie's is very much about, looking at what's new, what's next, what are the new market areas that we need to be focusing on. Also, we have a whole section of the business, Christie's Ventures, which is about investing in in new tech, and the areas that we feel will really add value in the future. So
and
that's
presumably blockchains right there in terms of being able to sort of track the history of any particular piece.
Absolutely, and from a digital art perspective, we've had several examples of where that's been in play. Yes, and also cryptocurrency, in terms of that being a way in which those digital pieces of work can be purchased.
Any other sort of digital pieces of the puzzle that I've missed?
I think, if we go back to the pandemic, of course, this is less digital, but the shift for auction to live stream was a huge moment.
Yes.
We turned the auction rooms into, TV studios. And of course, there are those moments where no one bar those, actually working on the auction was in the room. People were bidding or online or on the phones, and that online bidding has of course been a huge piece over the last few years. I mean, last year 2024 we saw 80% of bids placed online,
and it's only 30 years ago that you actually had to be in the room.
Yes,
so it's actually that this has all happened very, very quickly, obviously accelerated by COVID.
Completely.
Yeah, that is extraordinary. And do you think that will continue? I mean, could it be at some point that the sort of room model is obsolete?
Personally, no. I don't think that. I think the live auction with people in the room will always be a key pillar to the business. It's such an exciting moment. The atmosphere, particularly for a big evening sale, you can't beat it. It's addictive, and some of that, of course, comes through on the live stream, and also on social. We'll have the highlights that we're posting, etc. But no, there's nothing like being in the room. But obviously, there are many other parts of the business that will run alongside that, and private sales, of course, is another area that is all about the one-to-one conversation and offering. It doesn't follow the auction calendar. We're really putting people in touch with the work that they are absolutely passionate to acquire, because our specialists know who owns those works of art, or whatever. It may be a jewel, it may be, a particular watch for their collection, particular wine. So they're making those connections, and that's all done with utter discretion. So nothing is coming to auction, nothing is public. And from a time perspective, that can happen at any moment in the year outside of the auction calendar.
Gosh, there's so much going on.
There's a lot.
At any one time. Thinking ahead, so
Yes.
looking ahead to 2025 to 2026, what are you most looking forward to?
So I think one of my highlights for this year will be around the Jenny Savile exhibition at the National Portrait Gallery. That probably sounds slightly odd, sitting in a commercial auction house, but we do support on occasion exhibitions. And we recently supported the Van Gogh exhibition at the National Gallery. Coming up in June, the Jenny Savile exhibition. We recently sold a Jenny Savile in 2021 evening sale, and I think that's going to be a really great moment for London. I think looking outside into the broader EMEA market, we've been investing hugely, no surprise, into the Middle East.
Yes.
Dubai in 2025 is celebrating its 20th anniversary.
Great.
Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia, where of course we've had clients for many years, and we have very, very close relationships with many clients there. We announced in September of 2024 we'd appointed an MD and had our commercial entity license for Saudi. So that will be a really interesting area to watch for 2025 and into 26.
Exciting. We'll look forward to seeing and hearing much more about that. You're on the home stretch, Nicky. The final question that we ask absolutely everybody is, Nicky Eaton, what is your ultimate luxury?
My ultimate luxury is having the opportunity not to look at your watch or your phone to see what time it is, to have complete freedom just to not worry about anything. Just go with the flow.
Gosh, when does that happen?
On an occasional weekend, I'll be lost in the garden doing something, and I'll suddenly realise I've been out there for 3 hours. And it doesn't matter, because I didn't have to be anywhere.
Yes.
I didn't have a schedule that day. And that, to me, is the moment of luxury.
Yes, it sounds like a complete fantasy to me, but maybe one day. Nicky Eaton, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for coming and chatting to all of us. And yeah, we can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you so much, Rosie. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us for Luxury Icons. This has been brought to you by the Luxury Communications Council in conjunction with Trapdoor Productions. If you'd like more information on the Luxury Communications Council, please visit our website, luxurycommunicationscouncil.com.